Hello everyone, this is Mr. Vanderpool. Today we're going to talk a little bit about unemployment and the statistic that most economists use to figure out the amount of unemployment in a nation, which is the unemployment rate. When we're talking about the unemployment rate, we're talking about um, the percentage of people that are looking for work and cannot find it. So at the time that this video is being made, in the United States, the unemployment rate is 5.5%, meaning 5.5% of the nation is looking for work and can't find it. In California, it's a little bit higher than that. It's 6.3% of the people of California are looking for work and cannot find it. So today we're going to be talking about unemployment, which is a major economic problem. You'll see stories about unemployment all over the news. We're going to talk about the different types of unemployment. We're going to be talking about the unemployment rate and how it's calculated, etc. So the unemployment rate is actually calculated through a survey that is conducted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Census Bureau. But before we get into the unemployment rate, we have to figure out some of the basics about unemployment, which means that we have to define some terms. So let's start off with population. When we talk about population, we're talking about the number of people in a country. Labor force, that's the number of people in a country that are classified as either employed or unemployed. So, for example, in 2008, you had 145 million people that were employed. You had 9 million people that were unemployed. Add those together, the labor force was 154 million people. You have the labor force participation rate. This is the percentage of the working age population in the labor force. In the United States, historically, it's been around 66%. It's far lower now. It's about 62.8% because you have lots of discouraged workers at the time that I am making this video right now. There's definitely a problem of people not participating in the labor force. Then you have employed. What does it mean to be employed? People 16 years and older that have a job are employed, and it doesn't matter if it's part-time or full-time. One thing I do want to point out, if you're working part-time and want to work full-time, you are considered underemployed. Or let's say you are working in a job below your skill level. You've got a PhD, you're working at McDonald's. You're also considered underemployed. So there's a statistic out there called the U6 number that will take the amount of underemployed and unemployed into account. And that statistic is 10.8%. 10.8% of the population is underemployed or unemployed. And some economists believe that is a more accurate number than the actual unemployment rate in terms of how an economy is doing. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it means to be unemployed. So unemployed, people 16 years and older that don't have a job but have actively searched for a job in the past 4 weeks are considered unemployed, meaning they've looked for work, they're looking for work, but they cannot find it. So the unemployment rate is equal to the number of unemployed divided by the number of people in the labor force. Now, a big problem with the unemployment rate is if you're not looking for work, you are not considered in the labor force, therefore you are not considered unemployed. So, not in labor force. If kids, military personnel, retired people, stay-at-home moms and dads, full-time students, your 40-year-old uncle who sleeps on the couch all day, all of us have them. Most of the homeless, these are people that are not looking for work. Therefore, they are not considered unemployed. And this can really mess with that unemployment rate statistic. So, for example, sometimes you'll start to have an economic recovery and you'll see the unemployment rate is actually going up. And the reason for that is that people are starting to enter the labor force. They start to become less frustrated, they enter the labor force, but they can't find work for a while, and you start to see the unemployment rate ticking up, even though you're starting to have an expansion. Okay, and so oftentimes the fact that people who are not in the labor force are not considered unemployed can create some statistical issues. Now we're going to look at types of unemployment. The first type of unemployment I want to look at is frictional unemployment. This is basically the unemployment that occurs between jobs. It's voluntary, it's good for individuals and society. If somebody graduates college, they're looking for their first job, or they quit one job to get another job for a period of time, they're not going to have a job, and at that time they are frictionally unemployed. You have structural unemployment. This is a worse type of unemployment. It's associated with a lack of skills or a declining industry. So, for example, high school dropouts that can't find a job, typewriter repairmen, obviously they are going to be unemployed because there aren't really any typewriters anymore. So think creative destruction. Oftentimes, I will ask my students, what killed Blockbuster? And they'll say Netflix or Redbox. And so then I'll say, yeah, that's probably true. But those employees, those former Blockbuster employees, would be good examples of structural unemployment because the entire market, the entire industry for movies changed. So those that lost their jobs due to that change, for example, the Blockbuster employees, would be structurally unemployed. All right, continuing here with some other types of unemployment. Cyclical. Generally, economists consider this the worst type of unemployment. It's associated with the downturns of the business cycle. It's associated with recessions and depressions. It's bad for society. It's bad for individuals. It creates a downward spiral, a downward cycle, where people are laid off, so they stop spending. So businesses start laying more people off, so there's less spending, which means you have more layoffs, and so then you have this downward spiral that can really hurt an economy. So cyclical unemployment is a very bad type of unemployment. And finally, you have seasonal unemployment. These are people that have lost their jobs for seasonal reasons. Mall Santas, lifeguards, golf pros in Alaska during January. Okay, these types of people that lost their jobs based on some sort of seasonal shift are considered seasonally unemployed. So I'll oftentimes ask my students, well, when do you think you'll see a lot of seasonal unemployment? And generally they'll tell me, well, maybe January, February, something like that, because people are getting hired on for the holidays and then they get let go. Those people would be considered seasonally unemployed. Now, full employment. This is an important concept in macroeconomics. It occurs when there is no cyclical unemployment present in an economy. Remember that cyclical unemployment is really bad. It's associated with a natural rate of unemployment. That is the level of unemployment experienced when the economy is producing at full potential, labor markets in equilibrium. Like we said, we don't have any cyclical unemployment. The United States, it's about natural rate of unemployment is about 4 to 5%. Generally, as a number, I'll go ahead and have my students just think of 5% as full employment and the natural rate of unemployment there. So we're going to go ahead and associate full employment with being on the production possibilities curve, maximizing your resources, being at the long run aggregate supply curve, which we're going to talk about at a later time, and being at the long run Phillips curve, which we're going to talk about at a later time as well. So why is unemployment bad? A couple of reasons. Probably the biggest one is Okins law. Okins basically said that every 1% increase in the unemployment rate causes a 2% decline in real gross domestic product. Because you have less people producing stuff, and so therefore there is less production. You have people sitting around not producing. That is one of the primary reasons why unemployment is a bad thing. The burden of unemployment is not equally shared in society. The poor generally will have higher unemployment rates than the rich. The educated if you're educated, you're much more likely to be able to find a job, and you're going to be being paid more than if you are not educated. Unemployment's also bad because it causes social unrest, and obviously it's hard on the individuals and families that cannot find a job. Another reason that unemployment is bad is because it creates what's called a GDP gap. Because what economists want to look at is they want to look at, okay, so if the economy was at full employment, this is how much it could be, how much it could produce. But if it's not at full employment, this is how much we are producing. What's the difference between what we could potentially produce and what we're producing now? That's called a GDP gap. So once again, from a macroeconomics perspective, unemployment is bad because it means less production. You have people not producing. So now what we're going to do for the next video is we're going to leave unemployment really quick, and we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the circular flow in an economy.